Oh no. You are bleeding. Okay. It's okay. I just gotta be calm. It says here in the book of policies and procedures that for any change in patient condition, I should notify the physician or the provider immediately. All right, I did that. Why are you still bleeding? Welcome, folks, to the Dim Nurse with me, your host, Blue. Ladies and gentlemen, time. It's the greatest asset that we all have. Thank you very much for giving me some of yours as we dive into this episode number 2. Still kind of in the wannabe section of our chat, and that's all about education today. And yeah, I'm going to try really hard not to bore you to tears, but let's face it, talking about education can be dull. If I had to sum everything up for any of you wannabe nurses, I would simply say you're better off, way better off, 100 million times better off by simply going to YouTube, searching some relevant videos, and then chatting with a wise current nurse. And that's all the education you really need. Let me rephrase. Actually will probably be just as good as any education you're going to get in 99% of the universities. I'll hedge a little bit and say universities within the US because that's my only frame of context. I'm sure everyone will love to hear that. I'm telling the next generation of nurses, go to YouTube, do some video marathoning, there we go, and chat with a current, reasonably talented nurse, and there's your education. Sadly, we don't accept that education at the time of this podcast and likely forever and ever and ever. The other part of the problem is, well, the same part of the problem, is that we have a lot of professors, yeah, this is for you, that are teaching things that they have no interest, let me rephrase, they may have a lot of interest, they have no credibility in teaching, and quite simply because they either haven't done it or haven't done it in so long that we can pretty much say they haven't done it. And if I was a betting man, I would bet most of my pennies, all but just a few, that if we ever put the professors in the student role, even within the subjects that they teach, and evaluated on a very practical sense how they fare, I'm willing to bet those pennies that it's not that great. And one day when I come to power, I will find some way of doing this by virtue of simulation, which is the way of the future and also kind of the way of today for nursing education. And we'll put on a little presentation, who's who of the professors, and we'll see how good the teachers are. But for now, we're stuck with the education system we have, which means YouTube won't cut it, chatting to someone wise won't cut it, and we're unlikely to change how we teach and who is doing the teaching because of many arbitrary requirements for these things. With that said, if you want to be a nurse, you need to do the traditional, broken, rather useless educational system that we've got right now, and that means you can go to school to be either an LPN or LVN, depending on where you live in the country, or a registered nurse, what I like to call real nurse, RN. It comes down to you can be an LVN or an LPN, or you can be a RN. And let's face it, there's really only one way for you to go in today, nearly the end of April 2020. If you're going to right now, be an LVN or an LPN, I think you need a checkup from the neck up. But let's get into it. LVN, LPN, they are, let's be honest, extinct. They were kind of extinct 10 years ago, but we just have some of the dregs still roaming around the health system because, let's face it, it's a cheap solution to some problem. And so there we go. But they quite literally have gone the way of the manual typewriter and the rotary phone. And so if that's, the way you want to go, flush your phone away, your cell phone, your $1,000 cell phone, pour some water on your laptop, and get prepared for the Stone Age. Because that's what you're doing. So return on investment, on the surface, maybe, right? Because it's a year of your life. Years makes no difference. A year, unlike 4 to be an RN. And it's by far and away, cheaper. So ROI, not really. ROI, a little bit misleading. Your time up front, short. Your money up front, relatively less, which all favors good ROI, but you have zero career ladder. You have really, really, really poor job security as we move into the next 10 years or even 5 years, if I'm honest or accurate, and on both things. So even 5 years, it's really, really sketchy. It's not something that I recommend if you simply want a year-long program that allows you to do a version of medicine. Even though this is a program called TheDimNurse, you really should not be so dim and go and be a paramedic. It's about the same amount of time investment. It's roughly the same amount of money investment, probably cheaper. And you're going to have a huge skill set by comparison and a much more useful career ladder. But if you insist upon being an LPN, just grab the nearest crayon and piece of paper, write on there LPN, there's your diploma, because let's face it, that's about what it's worth. But next to that, write FOOL, because that's what you're going to be. Moving right along to legit category, and that is going to be the RN, or registered nurse, or real nurse. And you've got a couple of options here for your education. You have a I'm going to lump two together, which is a hospital-based certification program and an associate degree in nursing program. And quite simply, if you want to know what I think about either of these two things, just rewind about 30 seconds and listen to what I said about crayons. So moving on to the more useful programs that you need to become an RN, we've got bachelor, and then you got some second career, so-called, or second degree bachelor or master's degree. So here we go. The traditional bachelor's degree, which probably 85% of you that are thinking about being a nurse, that have a modicum of common sense, are going to be saying, yes, I want a bachelor's degree in nursing. And why do you want it? Well, because 99.99999% of the world is employing only bachelor prepared or higher nurses, meaning you need to have at least a bachelor's degree in nursing for someone to pay attention to you that is in charge of hiring people. So there we go. 4 years. You gotta do a load of prerequisite shit, which is all about sciences, microbiology, and anatomy and physiology. It's taught in a very abstract way, which is really useful to no one because we don't work and practice in an abstract way. Whatever. You have to do your sciences, your basic sciences, your nursing specific sciences, and then you spend hopefully at least 2 of those 4 years actually looking at and attempting to care for patients. There we go. If you already have a degree that is a bachelor or higher, and you decide, that was a waste, or I don't really like my career, or whatever other reason that we kind of glossed over in episode number 1, that you may want to be a nurse now instead of before, you have basically 2 choices. I mean, you have 3. You could also go from the ground up, bachelor program. That seems a little bit dumb to me. So you've got two other programs that you can choose from, the so-called second bachelor degree or the master's entry degree. My overwhelming thought on either of these programs is that they are highway robbery, and that whoever set the price for these programs should be slapped repeatedly. What can I... Off to a great start. So yes, the second bachelor's degree program is great because on average it's about 12 months, 16 months, something like this. And it quite simply expedites the painful process that is the traditional bachelor's degree to get you to being a nurse. And of course, we're all about saving that time. And time, of course, is a huge factor in our return on investment. The problem is, as I just said seconds ago, it's hugely expensive, so you have to make sure that it is legit, number one. So not a diploma mill like so many private or lesser known universities that just churn out degrees are. The master's entry, if you have a bachelor's degree already and you are wanting to be a nurse, I would say to you, if I had to say or be shot, I would say forget the second bachelor's degree and do the master's entry degree, because what this is, plain and simple, is a accelerated bachelor's of nursing program, a lot like the second bachelor program that we just mentioned, but it's a tiny bit longer, and the result after is, of course, you get a master's of science in nursing. I'll pause there. If they're offering you anything other than a Master's of Science in Nursing, so MSN, run for your life. It's not worth your time. In nursing, people care about master's degrees that are actually in the field of nursing, not a closely related field. I digress. These programs are 15, 18 months. Some of them get closer to 2 years, but really not, because you're not learning anything outlandish or advanced. It's what you need to be a nurse, plus or minus a couple of graduate level so-called courses so that you meet the requirements for a master's degree. That, even though it is hellaciously expensive depending on where you go, and is not as common, so you can't find it everywhere like you can the second bachelor program, I still think that if you had to choose, if you're in that position to choose, that's going to be your best bet, because yes, it's expensive, but for the minimal amount of extra time and roughly the same amount of money, if you shop wisely, you are going to end up with a higher degree, which is a graduate master's degree, which will open many more doors for you in the future to do whatever the hell you may want to do. So that's my 2 cents on the subject. Now, how do you choose an actual school to go to? This is a crapshoot, okay? So you have any kind of school that you can think of, from community college way up to Ivy League school. If you're a fan of my advice, which is mostly common sense and logic, you're not going to be using a community college because you're not seeking an associate degree program, because that is foolish. You may use that as a school to get some of your prerequisite sciences, and that's fine. But you won't be using it full stop for a degree. So then it leaves you with a public university, a private university, or an Ivy League university. As far as I'm concerned, and ladies and gentlemen, this, your host, me, Baloo, has been in every single style of university you can imagine, including, yes, community college, all the way up to, yes, Ivy League. And I've done the public university and I've done the private university, quite simply because I was that dim nurse that made way too many stupid, foolish decisions about education. So here we go. I paid my price quite literally. If you are in a state that has public or state-driven universities such that you get a good deal on tuition, and good deal is either free or grossly cheaper than the next person that isn't of those two categories, and that they have a program that doesn't suck, meaning they're known in the community for having terrible nurses that don't go into practice very well, or half their class fails, or they let in any fool that decides they want to be a nurse. If they have a modicum, at least, of credibility, and look outside your 5-block radius of this town or the city that they're in, because that's a little echo chamber. You want to see if their reputation, good, bad, or indifferent, extends, a little bit wider than that. So ask around if you have friends in other states or friends in other cities, if they've ever heard of the school, number one, and, what people's opinions of that school or university is. And that's going to help you make up your mind. Because if you have that, I'm going to say 90% of the so-called private universities, as we speak about nursing, are shit wastes of money. Let me just emphasize shit wastes of money. There is no private school at all whose claim to fame is that they are the best nursing program, of any private university. Because private universities, that's not their claim to fame. They do engineering, or they do computer science, or some other branch, and that's what their notoriety is in. That's why they charge an arm and a leg, because it's so high profile and fancy. There is no schools, and if you want to write to me, by the way, if you like or hate the show, either way, write to me. It's TheDimNurse@gmail.com. TheDimNurse@gmail.com. Write to me and say, hey, you idiot, I found a private school whose claim to fame was that they have the best bachelor's degree program for nursing ever. And look at all their statistics. They're wonderful in every way. You don't know what you're talking about. Send that to me. I will fall over. I don't know what will happen after that, but I'll fall over if that's actually true, or if they just didn't do some clever marketing that fooled you. Run for your life away from any private university if your hope is but if your hope is to be a nurse. That is a waste of money. You need to go to a public university or a state-driven university. Go there, get the same degree, the same or better education, as good as we can get, and you will have a hugely better return on your investment. I'm going to extend that pretty much to the Ivy University as well. I don't appreciate that much difference in the public university, or private for that matter, and Ivy League. Ivy League University, there's a lot of, pomp and circumstance, because that's what Ivies are about. But the education that you're getting right now today is not blow your mind disproportionately good, that it is worth the ridiculous amount of money that is that school. Here's the caveat. If you are independently wealthy, or you have parents that are independently wealthy, or you have won the lottery literally, and you have that kind of money such that it makes no difference to you whether you spend $1 or $1 million to be a nurse, first I might ask, why, if you have that kind of money, are you going to be a nurse? But after that, I'm going to say, then go to your Ivy League university. Go. I'm not convinced your education is going to be any better. I'm not convinced that you're going to be that much brighter of a nurse. In fact, sometimes I see the opposite. But it's a designer label. You go to an Ivy League school and you write on your resume, I went to this Ivy League school. Everyone's going to be like, oh. And they'll be dazzled with the brand name. That's going to open doors for you now. It's going to open doors for you 20 years from now. Only then would it be a useful return on your investment. Other than that, total waste of time and money. Take my word. Do a little homework. Make sure that whoever is teaching the classes to you has actually some stake in the specialty, has seen a patient in 3D and, in less than 5 years. Make sure that the hospitals they're sending you to, aren't like a clinic somewhere in an alley behind an alley, but a hospital that's legitimate, that does good evidence-based medicine, that allows you to see a variety of illnesses and allows you to see good medicine in that whole process of how you be a nurse, and allows you to develop skills that you need to be a nurse. And, that's not always the shiniest hospital with the brand name recognition. Some of the smaller hospitals, the nurses have a much higher skill set because they are the only people. They don't have 10 assistants. They don't have 10 phlebotomists. They don't have 10 unlicensed additional personnel or whatever kind of label you want to give them. They don't have 10 layers. They have to do everything themselves. And so their skill is high. They don't often get credit because they're not dazzling people with brand recognition of their hospital, but they're still very good nurses. So do a little time researching. Forget antiquated education and antiquated versions of nursing, and make an investment that has a good return as you enter into this realm that is nursing. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going away now. Thank you very much for listening. You've been a very attentive audience to work with. Take care, and hopefully, be it your next shift, your next class, whatever it is, you're a little less dope.